previous episode 9, we explored the new card Hippo and how it works fairly well in Khumalo, where you are able to exploit weaknesses in the corp's defensive structure and assault, siege it with your ID ability and lots of pressure. However, there are ways in which we can increase the synergy with between our deck and Hippo, and today we'll be doing exactly that by inserting a Consume into our deck. This is going to be our long-term economy card, and it works so well with Hippo because Hippo triggers Consume, right? Hippo is a runner card that trashes installed corp cards, well, in the form of ice, which allows Consume to gain virus counters. Each virus counter on Consume is basically worth 2 credits, so essentially you are recuperating the install cost of Hippo. I think that's a pretty good deal considering that you're doing a lot of other trashing as well. We are going to increase that further by playing Imps. This is the deck that we are going to be playing. It is leaning rather heavily into the Nob Carry Consume Imp combo. For those of you not very familiar, when all those 3 cards are set up, you are able to gain Imp counters freely with Nob Carry as long as you're making successful runs, which you should be. And when you use that said Imp counter to trash whatever you access, you will inevitably gain a Consume counter, and that fuels your economy. Such a deck would want to run every single turn to get the Nob Carry and Imp triggers, which means that we need a deck that that is designed such that it will take very structured turns. You want to be running 1 or 2 clicks each turn and use the remaining clicks to regain the cost of running. Nowadays running is pretty expensive, don't forget. Corps are running very taxing ice. So we are using cards that reliably give us a way to make money using clicks like Consume, like clicking Liberator account, but most importantly, we are also going to be playing Zero. This is the Anarch Professional Contacts, allowing you to gain 1 credit and potentially 2 cards every time you hit that 0. So that's the engine that we're going to use, and we'll try to execute it reliably. Additionally, today's game will be incredibly classic because we are going to face a very classic matchup in CTM. Now, I'm not 100% sure whether my opponent was playing the exact CTM list that Chris Dyer spotted at Euros this year, but it looked almost basically identical. So we'll just assume that it's the same list. These are the cards. For those of you who are not familiar with it, this deck basically attempts to score an AR enhanced security early and use that as a key piece for the tempo war by throwing out lots of assets and making it really difficult to get rid of them off the board without taking tags, and then trying to close the game out with either the psychographics or an exchange of information. If you choose to ignore the assets, they could be calibration testings that allow for fast advance. A very powerful deck. And but we do have a good solution in Khumalo, who is able to sustain his own economy without the use of resources at all, thanks to Consume. With lots of targets to trash, and the punishment for trashing in the form of CTM traces and AR enhanced security tags, this makes for a very dynamic and very interesting matchup. We'll be analyzing this fairly competitively, so here goes. As always with my competitive analysis, I'm going to be commentating over a video recording, so if the video is choppy, please forgive me for that. I keep my opening hand here. It looks really juicy. There are a lot of good cards in my opening hand. Pad Tap, one of the best answers against CTM with all its drip economy, is going to trigger Pad Tap so many times. Liberator account, a very strong source of early economy, which will allow me to contest assets for some time, and obviously double inject to draw me into breakers as I need them. My opponent begins with a standard opening of double asset or new servers, followed by an ice on HQ, presumably because they don't want the stuff to be Khumalo trash. Seems pretty reasonable. The question is, do you contest server 1 or 2 and 2 early? Typically this is a no-brainer decision. You would contest it if you have Sure Gamble in your opening hand or a Dirty Laundry. In this case we don't. So this is going to be pretty difficult, One option we could take is to ignore the assets and setup. So something like credit, install Liberated, take 4 credits off Liberated, and then play pad tap. That would be usually a good opening, turn 1 opening. But against the potential threat of AR Enhanced Security and Rashida Jahim, we can't really afford to do that. Let me rewind the video a bit, and we can see that MCG, my opponent, did keep their hand. So it must be a good hand. There must have been some really good stuff in their hand, be it Bankers Group, be it Rashida, be it AR Enhanced Security. So based on that, I think we really should contest it. The chances of them having hard-hitting news to follow up is actually relatively low. Even though the deck runs 3 copies of HHN, you know, more than half the time they won't actually have it in their opening hand. Especially if you actually bother to contest the Rashida. So with that said, I make the bold play of running turn 1 because I do need to clear the board of Rashidas, and instead I find myself an AR Enhanced Security. Now that's interesting. This is really good for me, and it suggests to me that server 2's card isn't an AR Enhanced Security, so I think I can ignore it. The problem is if we run click 2 on server 2 and it turns out to be something like a Bankers, we can trash it, and then we'll have to clear the tag. By then, how many credits would we have left? We'll only have 1 or 2 credits, which is a really bad position to be in because we have the Liberated account in hand. So because of that, I'm willing to sacrifice the Rashida, willing to sacrifice the Bankers Group, because if either of them trigger, I get a pad tap trigger as well. So that would put me on 8 credits. Pretty safe margin for hard-hitting news. Pass the turnover, my opponent instead advances the card. Turns out they made the opening gambit of double AR Enhanced Security. I really should have checked it. Oh well, at least they are on 2 credits. Hard-hitting news won't be a threat for a while now, so we're going to dirty laundry into R&D, see an exchange of information, and immediately hammer it out of the way. We don't want to deal with that card. It's worth it even though I'm taking a tag from AR Enhanced Security, which I then clear. We really cannot afford to let our opponent get exchange into their hand, because they could potentially land a C-Source exchange later on. We could potentially go tag me later on, and we don't want to deal with exchange in general. Right, last click we play Employee Strike to prepare ourselves for assaulting the remotes, because even though they have AR Enhanced Security out, it's still of paramount importance to trash Rashidas. My opponent did not play any assets last turn, so I'm free to take money. I'm able to set up my Liberator accounts, and now I'm in very healthy shape. They can play anything on the board they want. I'm going to immediately trash it, clear the AR Enhanced Security tag, and then money up with Liberated. I even have a second Liberated and a Sure Gamble to go in my opening hand. I play Turning Wheel here because Turning Wheel is God tier multi-access card. You really want to have it against CTM, especially to punish them if they play stuff like Resistor on HQ or R&D. You can just keep farming them for Turning Wheel counters and go in for a big dig win, especially in desperate situations. You know, get lots of multi-access and win before they have the opportunity to counter-attack with you know, exchange of information or some such. Now they finally play an asset and we are going to contest it. We have the very clear money lead here, so it's very safe to run it, trash it, take the tag, clear it, take gamble money. There's no way they're going to hard-hitting news us here. Even if they have hedge fund in hand, we can simply clear the 4 tags during our turn. Now I'm going to force my opponent to spend lots of money here. I'm first going to run HQ, and this is why we set up the Turning Wheel early on. The reason for running HQ here is twofold. Firstly, we want to force them to res their HQ ice, which will definitely happen, because if they don't, we are going to get access to HQ and trash lots of stuff from their hand or find their agendas. Well, after they res the ice, they'll be poorer, so we can swing over to server 4 and contest that remote, which is my main purpose. I want to contest server 4 because I suspect there's a very powerful card behind it. We hit an Enigma, which loses us a click, but now that they are so poor and I'm so rich, I can run into server 4 and we see a Resistor. So now I have to start calculating. If server 4 is a Rashida, which is very likely the case, what is the cost? We can hammer Rashida with Khumalo, but then we'll have to clear the tag at the end of our turn. Yeah, that could work. Don't forget we are only taking 1 tag. However, we don't have the breaker for Resistor, so in addition to clearing the tag, which costs 2 credits, we have to spend 4 credits to beat the Resistor trace. We have no clicks remaining to money up, so I'm doing the calculations. I'll be down to 9 credits. I think I would rather bounce out and hope that's not an agenda. Right, so with that said, I'm going to let this card in the remote go. I'm not going to contest it, and we pass the turn over to our opponent, who then scores the bill. Bloody freaking hell. I lose my employee strike. That was a really bad decision, but hey, don't worry. We are all rewarded with bad plays because I draw into my second strike, which keeps my opponent under strike, allowing me to continue suppressing their remotes. One problem with them scoring the bill here is that now they've widened the economy gap. Now I'm leading that much further ahead, which is always nice. Unfortunately, we still haven't found our barrier solution. That resistor is really expensive to break, and we really want to be using Yusuf instead of paying 4 for resistor. So instead of forking out the money for resistor, I'm just going to straight up stim hack into server 4, committing myself to trashing whatever is in server 4 with real money. In this case, the Rashida. I'm going to use stim hack money to trash it. They're not getting that off. And then I'm going to run server 5 here. Because AR Enhanced Security has already fired this turn, I can trash the other remote without taking any additional tags. We clear our tag at the end of our turn. Notice we are not in hard hitting news range because our opponent scored the bill, they were poor. Right, so we start using 0, and 0 draws us into Yusuf, exactly the card I need right now. Yusuf allows me to contest the remote, which is now going to be a problem because my opponent scores a second bill. Why am I not contesting this remote? Seriously. Okay, serious business time. We need to contest every single card from now on. They're up 5 points to 1. We've been really dropping the ball on running the correct remotes here. Right, so now our turn is going to be really sweet because we had Black Orchestra in our hand, which was sniped off with 0, and 0 drew us into 2 MK Ultras. So this is the amazing part about 0. When you're playing this many bin breakers, there's a very high chance that the net damage will hit one of your bin breakers. In the case of the CTM matchup, where we don't have time to regularly draw our cards, our hand size will typically be very low. So in this scenario, with this particular hand, we can guarantee that the next time we press 0, we have a 100% chance of hitting the MK Ultra in our hand, which is win-win for us because we want the MK Ultra in our bin, and we want to draw cards with 0. So contrast this to something like Mimic. If we were running Mimic, we wouldn't be able to clicklessly get our Mimic in the bin. I mean, we could, but we can't install it from the bin, whereas we can do that with MK Ultra. This is why I'm running Black Orchestra and MK Ultra instead of Mimic or some other breaker. Right, so back to the game. We are going to see how my structured turn takes place. Every turn I'm going to be making runs, and I'm going to be using 0 and using my remaining clicks to click off Liberated. Click 1 was 0, we hit the MK Ultra, we find ourselves consume and retrieval run. Now retrieval run's not very useful anymore, it's mostly there to fetch programs milled by inject, but we don't have that. Instead, the consume is going to be the card we're looking for. This is our long-term economy, very crucial against CTM, gives us the out of going tag me later in the game. So click 2 is definitely install consume. We want to install that before running. The question is, where do we run next? We can't run R&D because it's too expensive. It's gonna, actually it's the same cost as HQ, but HQ just makes more sense. Agendas are probably clogging up in there as well as key operations. So we're gonna break HQ, we're gonna access 2 cards and see Global Food, which we steal, and Team Sponsorship. At this point, my opponent's on 5 agenda points. I don't need to worry about Team Sponsorship because if they score another agenda, they probably win anyway. Alright, so now here comes the tricky part. They installed 3 cards. Dang, I didn't access that many of them. I know one of them's the Team Sponsorship. I have no idea whether any of the others are bills or AR Enhanced Securities. It's time to check a couple of them. Now I know that I have Yusuf out, so challenging server 4 should be possible. Click 1 is 0 as always, because all the remaining cards in my hand were useless. 0 snipes off the second MK Ultra and draws me into Stim Hack Retrieval Run. That's a very interesting mill. Stim Hack, possibly a key card. Do we use it now? Probably not. What I want to do is to force my opponent to rest the ice on server 4 before deciding whether I should commit the Stim Hack to that server. Because right now server 4 is free to break. With Yusuf, I don't have to spend any credits. The real question is, what's the outer ice? As it turns out, it's another resistor. Okay, so server 4 is basically taxless because Yusuf chews through resistors like nothing. I'm going to kill my opponent's Rashida, and beat the trace, the CTM trace. Don't forget they scored the bill, so strike is off the table. I'm potentially taking 2 tags with my run. I can't afford to clear tag because I want to challenge another remote. So after killing the Rashida, I'm gonna check one more of the remaining remotes. Hopefully I can easily trash it, and then last click clear tag. So clear tag here. Nope, I'm not gonna check any of the remaining remotes. I was really afraid of getting hard-hitting news. I don't know, that was a bit strange from me. Right, so now I'm gonna charge up Yusuf here. I run server 7 and I see a team sponsorship. That's fine. The main reason for running here is that I get a Yusuf counter so that I can run server 4 and break both subroutines with Yusuf. Okay, so those click 1 and click 2 were both spent running. Unfortunately, we hit a Mombat Virtual Tour. This is something we are forced to trash, but thankfully we are Khumalo. So instead of paying 5 credits, we pay 0. We do take 2 tags though, which I'm going to remove one of them, but with the CTM trace. By beating the CTM trace and remove the other. Normally with my last click I hit consume, so I was very afraid of getting hard hitting news. I rather take 4 credits of consume than to use my 0 once per turn. So that turn I didn't use the 0, and this just goes to show how busy your turns can get. Sometimes you don't even have the time to use 0 all the time, every single turn rather. But we'll try to use it again next turn. 2 of the 3 cards in our hand are dead in the 2 retrieval runs, but of course I hit the useful card in Stim Hack. Never mind, 0 draws me into 2 more useful money cards, Dirty Laundry and Daily Cast, both of which I want to play ASAP. Firstly because I need the money, and secondly because I don't want either of them to get hit by 0. So you can imagine my second click is going to be Dirty Laundry somewhere, in this case HQ. I want to farm turning wheel counters. I see an Enigma. Third click is Take Liberated Money. You're noticing that there are lots of click abilities on my board, so there's always an opportunity for me to use my clicks more efficiently than simply taking a credit. Last click, play Daily Cast. Hand the turn over. So this is the regular tempo of the deck. You run once, you hit your 0, you hit Liberator accounts and install something from your hand. A very standard turn. You like to keep going that way. It's very efficient, feels very good not to be clicking for cards or credits. Right, more assets installed, we've got to check them. They could be winning bills, right? We can't let our opponent have them. Click 1, check server 8. Hostile infrastructure. Okay, this is not Chris Dyer's deck. Very spicy. Once again, we don't really care at this point. Net damage doesn't really matter. What's gonna hurt us is not the net damage. It's the tempo of having to clear tags. Click 2, we're going to check server 4. We need to check every server here, and it's free with Yusuf, so why not? We're going to see a team sponsorship. Again, we ignore that. So we have 2 remaining clicks. We're going to spend one of them playing using 0, and the last click is to play one of the cards from our hand. One of the cards we just drew in Pat Tap. Pat Tap hits the table. Alright, pass the turn over. We know that they're not going to score an agenda here because they didn't install any. And yeah, as long as we keep checking the remotes, I know they cannot score an AR enhanced security, so we should be good to go. We don't have to worry about team sponsorship triggers. Now, they did not install any new cards this turn, but they did res a daily business show, one of the remotes I didn't check at all. We need to get that out of the table because that allows them to bury agendas that we need to find. So immediately, we're going to run and trash that. You notice the credit differential. I'm on 17, they are on 9. This is looking really good for us. We're going to trash the daily business show here. Not using cold hard credits, we are Khumalo. Instead of paying 4 credits, we pay 2 Yusuf counters. I'm happy with that. We get a consume counter, we beat the CTM trace. Click to 0. 0 hits the I've Had Worse, which draws us net gain 5 cards, seeing Dirty Laundry, Sure Gamble, 2 very important cards. Data Sucker, not a very important card. All my opponents' eyes are low strength. Data Sucker doesn't make a difference, so I'm not in a hurry to install it. A duplicate 0 and a last I've Had Worse, which we can trigger with 0 once again. Alright, so we want to clear our hand of the important cards before hitting 0 again, in this case Dirty Laundry and Gamble. So you can be sure I'm going to play one of them and spend the remaining click clearing tags. Right, all looking good for us so far. We are on 16 to their 9 credits. We are in the credit lead and we can afford to keep checking the remotes, which we're going to do right here. Click 1 Dirty Laundry into HQ. I could Dirty Laundry into server 9 as well, but I think it's time I start exerting some pressure on centrals. If I'm well in the lead in terms of money, which I was, why not just hit HQ? Get a turning wheel counter and perhaps find something interesting to trash. Today we see IP block. Don't forget, agendas are accumulating in HQ slowly but surely since we are killing the daily business shows since they are not scoring agendas. So that's the most likely place you can find agendas. This is not an agenda, we move on. We run server 9, gotta check it, and we find a Kelly testing. Okay, that goes in the bin. That gives them an easy scoring window. We can't have that. We're gonna trash the Kelly testing. I paid 2 credits for this. In retrospect, maybe using my 3 Yusuf counters would have been better. I just wanted to have the Yusuf counters live so that I can threaten the server 4 run anytime I wish in case they jam something in there. Right, then I take consume money and clear tags. See, we are still well ahead of our opponent. 14 credits at the end of a run where we ran HQ and a remote. It's looking really good for us. They are trying to install 1 card every turn to get me to clear tags, but really that's not going to work very well. I'm just going to run it again after hitting the 0. And I see a team sponsorship, not going to trash that. Well, we are in the lead, so why not run HQ again? Paid 3 credits on Black Orchestra, access 2 cards, psychographics. Ooh! I'm not going to trash that because that would put me down a few credits, which I don't really want. And then we access an Enigma. This one I have to trash. Enigma is one of the most taxing eyes on my opponent's side because I'm using an inefficient breaker in Black Orchestra. Normally you run last click on HQ and just break the last subroutine, but with Black Orchestra it always costs 3 to break, and 3 is mighty expensive. Imagine if they put Enigma on HQ or R&D. It will make it really hard for me to get those random HQ runs in. So I had to trash the Enigma there, clear the tag. What has to be done, has to be done. Alright, so now we are on even footing with our opponent. 12 to 12 credits, but I don't think they'll launch a oh shit. Oh no, triple team spawn. 15 minutes! What's bound to happen someday. Okay, folks, we have a problem here. This is not looking good at all for us now. Kelly testing comes back. Rashida Jahim comes back. Daily business show comes back. We are in trouble. 3 agenda points to 6, and our opponent has regained their board state. Right, it's time to play strike. It's time to deny the Rashida. And it's time to deny their Kelly testing. We can't let them have Kelly testing because a fast advance 15 minutes or AR enhanced security will win them the game. Thankfully, they haven't set up any remote eyes of value, so I'm still trashing these for basically free. Taking my consume counters, clearing tag last turn, ending my turn on 7 credits. So I'm not very worried about a hard hitting news here because even if my opponent does like credit, hard hitting news, they would give me pad tab credits, which means that I should be able to evade the trace or at least force them to spend all their money on the hard hitting news. So they do exactly that as I planned because I knew that they had hard hitting news in hand. They did credit, hard hitting news, and I was going to beat, or I was going to force them to make a very high trace. But then I saw, wait a minute, where's my pad tab money? And then I realized pad tab doesn't gain money when the corp clicks for credits. It only gains money when the corp uses a card that gives them money. Well, so much for that. I was planning to actually have enough money to dodge the trace, but now we are in a very awkward situation where we are forced to take 4 tags, but only have 7 credits to clear them. Uh-oh. Uh-oh indeed. Okay. So, no matter what happens here, I'm going to end my turn with at least 1 tag. Because of that, I don't think there's any point in going tagless from now on. Right? Because if my opponent has an exchange of information in their hand, they're gonna win if I just play passively by taking money and clearing tags. So I need to go tag me from now on and start whacking cards from my opponent's hand, starting with the psychographics that they have in hand. So I'm trying to plan a way such that I can run into HQ and see 2 cards with turning wheel. Click 1 is run R&D. At this point I can completely ignore turnpike because we're going tag me. We're going to see 1 card in Rashida, but more importantly, we need the turning wheel counter so that we can multi-access HQ. I trash the Rashida to gain a consume counter. Second click run R&D, we're going to see a fresh card. This time it is Kelly testing. Right. I think about this for a while. And then I realized that they're too poor to use Kelly testing. I'd rather them have Kelly testing on top of R&D than to have another exchange of information on top of R&D. Notice that they play, right. So yeah, so I'm gonna let them have the Kelly testing because I want to run HQ here. Click 3 was 0. You might think that click 3 would be use consume here, but the trouble with using consume is if I get hit by close accounts, I'll be very sad. So we'll offshore our money on the consume. Instead, we'll hit 0 to draw into some cards, including the imp that I haven't seen all game. You would install the imp here normally, but we need to hit HQ. We need to remove the psychographics from the hand. So last click, run HQ, break with Black Orchestra, see 2 cards. Card number 1, Mumbat Virtual Tour, we ignore. Card number 2, Psychographics, immediately gets Khumalo'd. No Psychographics for you. Right, so now we know the top card of R&D is not an agenda, and they have no Psychographics in hand. They might have the exchange needed to win the game. After all, exchange of information costs 0 to play. So if they have it, well, they win. There's not much I can do about it, given my situation. But they don't. So now we know the hand doesn't have exchange, and they have Kelly testing in server 4 because that's an upgrade. But they have no money to score with Kelly testing. In order to score, they need 5 credits. 3 to res the Kelly testing, and 2 to install double advance and agenda. So that is off the table for them for a while now. So this gives us another turn to attempt to win. Once again, since R&D is porous, we're going to go for it. We're going to take our consume money, and then we're going to run R&D a bunch of times. Right, click 2, run R&D. We see AR Enhanced Security, we steal that. Click 3 is run R&D. We are going to see Mumbat Virtual Tour. Alright, so Mumbat Virtual Tour is a card that is useless for me, useless for my opponent. We'll leave it on top of R&D so that they don't top deck and exchange. At this point, the only way we are losing is if they top deck and exchange, and we want to prevent that from happening. Ideally, what happens is we run R&D, we see an exchange, we mill it with Khumalo, and they never get access to it ever again. Right, last click, deny the DBS because DBS allows them to dig through the deck for the exchange. We can't have that, so we're going to trash it. We ignore the tag. At this point, it's us against the timer, as we hope they don't draw into exchange. They don't draw exchange, but they do draw into close accounts, which is bloody annoying given that I just offloaded my 4 counters on consume. Never mind, back to us. Since we have no credits, we might as well take the time to run R&D. The turnpike tax doesn't apply because we have 0 credits. Click 1, we see Commercial Bankers Group. Oof. Now, that's not a card we want to use Khumalo's ability on, because if we freedom trash this, rerun R&D, and we happen to see an exchange, we'll be really sad. We need to save our Khumalo triggers for exchange of information. So unfortunately, we have to trash it with real credits, which we don't have, which means we have to leave it on the top of the deck. There's not much we can do about this, really. So this was a very painful no action here. I said this was a very painful no action here. What are you thinking? What are you thinking? Is there another line of play that allows me to freedom trash this card? There is. So here's what I was thinking. Instead of leaving the bankers on top of R&D, I'm really desperate to see lots of agendas right now. I can't keep giving my opponent a turn, because every time I give my opponent a turn, they can click to draw, and find an exchange to win. Right? So we want to win the game before giving them too many turns. The best way to do that is trash cards from R&D. Now, to mitigate the loss of our ID ability, we can't Khumalo exchange of information anymore, but what we can do is to take consume money, install imp, and then run R&D last click, being very sure that we can hammer any cards that are exchange of information. So we're going to see one card here is a resistor. Ooh, well, that's going in the bin for sure. We're not going to have our opponent install resistor on R&D, thereby making R&D runs impossible against a strength 13 resistor. That's not going to happen. Passing the turn over, our opponent sadly trashes our turning wheel. That was a very smart move by them. I was really hoping they wouldn't notice the turning wheel ticking up, but being tagged, obviously, as the co-op, you have to do this. Get rid of my multi-access. That gimps me a lot. However, Khumalo still has very good multi-access, pseudo multi-access with imp, with all the imp trashing and Khumalo trashing. So we are going to work our way through our opponent's 10 card R&D. by this point, R&D must be dense with agendas, so we should be able to find a win fairly soon here. We see a daily business show. Now, we have lots of options here. We are definitely going to either Impit or Freedom Khumalo it. We have infinite virus counters by this point, so it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to arbitrarily pick one of them, in this case Khumalo. Pay 2, trash it. Click 2, rerun R&D. So this is like a 2-card multi-access. We see Kelly testing. What did I do here? I chose not to trash it. Interestingly, I chose not to trash it. I guess that was because I wanted to save the imp trigger in case there was an exchange on top of R&D. I continued my turn by doing a 0 and then taking consume money. Drawing into my last turning wheel as well. So next turn, I was definitely looking to install turning wheel and running R&D a bunch of times. Given that my opponent was taking so much time to interact with my board state, trashing my resources, and purging counters, they have no time at all. They have absolutely no time to get money to score fast advanced agendas using Kelly testing. This basically tells me they don't have any fast advanceable agendas in hand, namely the last build, which means it must be in the deck and I'm going for it. Click 1 is install Knob Carry here. I want Knob Carry after the purge so that I can get my imp counter back. My opponent thought that by purging they could get rid of my imp counter and prevent me from infinitely trashing the deck. But Knob Carry basically allows me to rampage through the deck like a madman. So I'm going to make a successful run here. Draw the imp. What? Kitty Cat. Oh, the one-off Kitty Cat got me. And they won 6 points, so obviously they won with Kitty Cat. Wow. Damn it. I did not see that coming. I really should have. I know that these kind of CTM decks tend to run they tend to run 4 agendas, 3 of which are AR enhanced securities, and obviously the remaining 1 point agenda is QPM. Of course it was in the deck and I hit it. So for those of you not aware, the interaction between Kitty Cat and Imp is such that Quantum Predictive Model takes priority. You can only imp a card after accessing it. So Quantum Predictive Model fires first, even though it's my turn. It has an earlier trigger, which means that it goes into the corpse score area, and my opponent immediately wins before I can do anything about it. So in hindsight, it seems very easy to blame my turn 1 on losing. Conceding the first AR enhanced security to my opponent meant that I was playing an uphill battle for the rest of the game. However, I think looking back, where I truly lost was not that. I mean, there are many ways in which the corp can score an AR enhanced security early regardless. I think my biggest mistake this game was not contesting the build. That was a huge mistake when I ran into the resistor and chose to bounce out instead of beating the trace and committing to it. Right? Because had I went in, it would have been basically a 4 agenda point swing in my favor, denying my opponent 2 points while gaining 2 myself. The endgame scenario would have been a 6-4 lead in agenda points, which meant that my opponent wouldn't win off QPM, nor would they win off a single exchange of information. So that would have basically guaranteed me the game. The fact that my opponent managed to score 2 builds under my nose basically prevented me from winning, because there was so few remaining eligible agendas to steal, and when I went tag me, that was the end of it as soon as I hit the Kitty Cat. Right, enough about harping about that. Let's look at some statistics, because I really love statistics. How many times do you think the turn 1 enhanced security fired? It's a lot. It really is a lot. That's something that Employee Strike cannot shut down. So as Khumalo, inevitably it's going to fire a lot. In this game, it actually fired 13 times. Now granted, 4 of those were post tag me, so we ignore them. The extra tag doesn't matter. 9 times I had to take and clear AR enhanced security tags. That's a lot of tempo. 18 credits and 9 whole clicks. That's more than 2 of my entire turns, just because my opponent scored the AR. Imagine if when you score a corp agenda, it says the runner loses, click, 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 click. Jeez, that's awful. And yeah, this is a very swingy agenda, and my opponent got it in their favor. It was also because of the turn 1 AR enhanced score that I decided to pitch all my hippos into the bin. I figured it's not really worth it to use hippo against a CTM that will trace you and tag you with AR enhanced security, essentially giving you 2 tags whenever you fire hippo. It doesn't seem worth it. In hindsight, I would really have loved to save a hippo for trashing the HQ Enigma, but you know, hindsight is 20/28 like that. I don't know if trashing the hippo was right. It probably was. I probably did not have the time to install hippo, trash and ice, and then clear tags. That probably wasn't happening. Now, what about pad tap? Can you hazard a guess? How many times did both pad taps fire in total? AR enhanced security's numbers were insane. Can you imagine how insane pad taps was? Well, turns out it fired a grand total of 3 times. Wait, what? 3! I left them there the entire game. My opponent forgot to trash them both, but it only gave me 3 credits from installing 2 pad taps. Yeah, as it turns out, pad taps trigger is surprisingly hard to meet, especially when you are denying all your opponent's asset economy. By trashing all the bankers groups and the Rashida Jahims, my opponent was basically forced to click for credits the entire game, which doesn't trigger pad tap. So basically, the only time pad tap ever fired was when my opponent played hedge funds, and there were only so many of them in their deck. Hence, pad tap did basically nothing this game, and through this game I realized how anti-synergistic it is in Khumalo, where you're striving to deny all your opponent's asset economy, because Khumalo does that very easily. In such a deck, pad tap is a no-go. Those could have been career fairs, those could have been bank jobs, anything. A lot of those things would have been better than the 2 influence wasted on this marginal economy card. Frankly, I'm disappointed, and you really shouldn't be playing pad taps in this particular deck. Moving on with the statistics, Zero was one of the big MVPs this game. It activated a total of 10 times. Now, I didn't get a turn 1 Zero, but I still managed to get so many triggers with it. Don't forget that Zero, besides drawing you cards, actually gains you credits as well. 10 activations gives me a net total of 9 credits after considering the install cost of 0, and those extra 9 credits, that's the same as a stim hack. It matters so much in this matchup where economy is everything. It basically gave me something to do on my clicks that I weren't running, and that something is a lot more efficient than clicking for credits or drawing for cards, because this does both, and it does them so well. It basically allowed me to find all my combo pieces, including the legendary Nob Carry Imp Consume combo. Because the second copy of Nob Carry and my imps were stuck at the bottom of the deck, I was basically not going to showcase that entire combo if not for the fact that Zero basically allowed me to draw my entire deck. Most other Khumalo games, you won't get to the bottom of your deck because you won't have the time to draw cards because you're too busy clicking for credits to regenerate money after your expensive runs. So Zero allows you to do that, and it really impressed me this game. You know, as I explained throughout the entire game, how my turns were so regular. You know, there's a tempo to them. You run early on in your turn, and then you spend the remaining clicks taking Zero, taking liberated money, installing a newly drawn card from your hand. It feels so good to have your engine churning that way, and you know, it's like a steam train just chugging along at a constant speed across the countryside. Now, of course, some things fell by the wayside. We had to take a lot of net damage from Zero, but if you look at the list of cards that were sniped, it turns out that all of them were basically blank, apart from Stim Hack. I was never going to use Retrieval Runs or Data Suckers this game, and having the Bin Breakers pitch by net damage is a benefit, not a downside. Really, the only card that I would have liked was Stim Hack, but considering that I was trading a Stim Hack for all the wonderful cards I was drawing, the daily cards, the dirty laundries, it was more than worth it. Totally more than worth it. This really is the analog version of Professional Contacts, and it's so much cheaper to install, so much more efficient. I absolutely love it. If you're building a deck like this Khumalo, Zero fits in absolutely perfectly. Now, for those of you who want to give this deck a shot yourself, it's a fun deck, but I must warn you, there is something missing in this deck. because your only barrier breaker is Yusuf and you have no ways to gain virus counters outside of successful runs, you will die to barriers on every single server. You have been warned. This is something missing from the deck. If you want, you can cut the pet tags for virus breeding grounds, which will ensure your Yusuf is always online, but that means you will have dangling influence. Well, it's not the worst to play a Khumalo deck with 13 influence. I must say, virus breeding grounds would be still more useful than the pet tabs this game. Well, hope you enjoyed this Khumalo episode and this entire Khumalo series. It's been a blast doing them. 10 episodes, can you believe it? Crazy stuff. Will there be more on the horizon? Who knows? Only one way to find out. Keep tuning in. Until then, as always, thanks for watching and happy net running. Bye bye.